Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Young here and welcome to a Metal Gear Solid 5 character analysis. Today I want to talk about Paz Ortega and what I have learned about her from both Peace Walker and Ground Zeroes. It's not until you listen to the game's various cassette tapes that you'll realize she's a more complex character than meets the eye. Her real name is Pacifica Ocean, and she was raised in the United States at a young age. Not much else is known about her past apart from the fact that she was taken in by Cypher after she lost her parents and became an orphan. For that, Pacifica believed that she owed him her life. To repay the debt, Pacifica fully devoted herself to becoming an agent of Cypher. She was trained to become a triple agent and not long after began operating within both the CIA and the KGB. Paz was also one of few Cypher agents to have had the privilege to meet Zero face to face and receive orders from him directly. Agents like Skullface would receive their orders via proxies. Paz's most important mission would arrive in 1974, the year of the Peace Walker incident. By then, she had matured into an adult woman and had trained to be one of Cypher's top agents, but for her special mission, she would have to assume a new identity. With Cypher's resources, she adapted the identity of Paz Ortega Andrade, a 16-year-old Costa Rican high school student and a lover of peace. She used this new identity and took advantage of KGB operative Zadornov to make contacts with Snake. On November 4th of 1974, Pacifica presented herself to Snake as the peace-loving Paz Ortega, while Zadornov presented himself as Professor Ramon Galvez. Using his guise, Zadornov asked Snake and MSF to help them drive out an unknown armed force that had entered their country, while Paz played her innocent self to fool Zadornov and convince Snake to partake in this assignment, which was in reality a mask for Zadornov's and Paz's individual agendas. Snake continually refused the job, even after he was offered an offshore plant located on the Caribbean Sea to use as a base of operations for MSF. Snake would only agree once Galvez presented a tape recording that a supposed friend of Paz's had accidentally recorded, through which Snake heard the voice of his deceased mentor, the boss. This friend would later be revealed to be Cecile, although in reality, Paz and Cecile had never met. With the seed planted, Paz simply waited as events unfolded. Snake and his army settled in the offshore plant and labeled their new base of operations Mother Base. Steadily, they grew to become a formidable army and nation, and soon, this army thwarted both Hot Coldman's and Zadornov's plan to use Peace Walker and its nuclear capabilities for their own gains. Peace Walker was destroyed, and Zadornov was taken into custody inside Mother Base. Soon after, an opportunity to infiltrate Mother Base presented itself to Paz. Under Kaz Miller's suggestion, Snake allowed Paz to stay in Mother Base, since to Snake's knowledge, Paz had nowhere to go without Zadornov's scholarship. In the days that followed, Paz helped Zadornov escape numerous times to distract MSF from her true goal, to modify and hijack Metal Gear ZEKE and use it against Big Boss to offer him an ultimatum. Big Boss was to rejoin and obey Cypher and use MSF under his will, or Paz would use ZEKE to launch a nuclear weapon on America's East Coast and frame MSF to turn the world against them. Big Boss refused the offer and eventually managed to defeat ZEKE, ejecting Paz into the ocean in the process. She survived the incident, drifting into the ocean until she was saved by a Belizean fisherman. After the incident, Big Boss and Kaz would find several diary tapes left behind by Paz, which are all available in both Peace Walker and Ground Zeroes. These tapes not only give a deeper insight of Paz, but also show a side to MSF and Mother Base that are seldom talked about. In her first diary entry, she recounted her first day at Mother Base, stating that her real trial and mission finally began. In the entry, she spoke of a particular event that day involving some MSF soldiers feeding a kitten, which equally surprised and disgusted her. A bunch of grown hard men, and they are the ones acting like schoolgirls, she recounted. But having to maintain her facade, she had no choice but to engage in their idle chit-chat. Eventually, one soldier asked her to give the kitten a name, and she named it Nuke. The men then gave her a little fish to feed the kitten, and once again, to maintain her cover, she had no choice but to indulge, no matter how pathetically she thought of these circumstances. It was quite clear from this tape just how much Paz's training had toughened her up. Cypher clearly locked her humanity away through her training to pave the way for an efficient and ruthless agent with unyielding devotion to Cypher and the mission. Her second tape recounted a time when Chico invited her to go fishing with some of the soldiers, an activity which Paz found to be degrading. Distasteful as it was, she went along to maintain her cover. The soldiers welcomed Paz, who they believed to be a teenage schoolgirl, and treated her like a princess since there were so few women aboard Mother Base. The weather was nice and sunny that day, with a gentle breeze and waves. After she cast her line, the soldiers began asking her questions about herself, to which she replied in accordance with her fake identity. Fish soon began to bite, and at some point, Chico's bait was stolen by a fish, which angered him so much that he stood up and almost fell into the sea. Paz admitted that it almost made her laugh along with the soldiers. Eventually, Paz got a bite of her own, although never having fished before, she admitted being a bit flustered. The ocean then suddenly reminded her of the deep-sea dive she had to perform as part of training, which were difficult days in which all she had to soothe herself were the fish gliding through the water. Paz eventually pulled her fish out, although it was much smaller than she had anticipated. She decided to give it to Nuke, and narrated in the tape that she wasn't the least bit disappointed, since she had not partaken in the activity for fun. The entry ended as she labeled the day thoroughly wasted. In the second entry, Paz began to show the slightest signs of vulnerabilities, such as the bliss of recalling the nice weather, the laugh she almost had at the sight of an angry Chico, and her moments with Nuke. But the wall she had built around her to keep her emotions intact still stood strong. Her third tape was recorded after she had let Zadornov out of his cell. No one suspected of Paz being the perpetrator. Later that day, Paz partook in cooking gallo pinto with Amanda and Cecile. Paz's mother cooked gallo pinto, but she hardly remembered its taste since she was raised in the United States at a young age. Regardless, she partook in the activity to maintain her cover. She described the experience of chatting with the two ladies as excruciating. She also noted that she had to be careful around Cecile, since Paz had told Snake and Kaz that the tape she presented came from a close friend of hers whose description matched Cecile's, but as mentioned before, Paz and Cecile had in reality never met before. Fortunately for her, this discovery was put aside by both Kaz and Snake. The day continued as the trio cooked gallo pinto, a process which Paz described in unusually great detail. Then their conversation turned to romance, which Paz found to be frustratingly stereotypical. After Cecile gave Amanda romance tips, they turned to Paz and asked her if there was anyone she liked, teasingly asking if it was Snake. Paz played it coy, of course, replying with a maybe. "He is pretty sexy, isn't he?" Cecile replied. As Paz recounted the story, she frustratingly narrated that the thought of romance had never once crossed her mind and made it clear that she had no interest in a man like Snake. Before long, the conversation was interrupted by the rich aroma of gallo pinto, which was finally ready to serve. Paz recalled how Nuke came in looking for a handout, but was given none as it wasn't the kind of food a cat would like. The gallo pinto was then served to the entirety of MSF. It was a big hit, and Paz particularly noted with an almost happy tone that Snake enjoyed the dish as well. The tape finally concluded with Paz clarifying once again that she had no interest in a man like Snake. In this third entry, Paz's vulnerabilities begin to show further. She tells herself that she did not enjoy the process of cooking the gallo pinto, but the way she described the process so blissfully and in such excruciating detail made it quite clear that she had a memorable and nostalgic experience. It is also interesting how Paz reacted to the romance conversation, particularly where Snake was concerned. She seems quite pleased that Snake enjoyed the dish she helped create. Furthermore, the way she repeated over and over again that she had no interest in Snake made her almost seem like a little schoolgirl with a crush. If not a crush, it is at least some form of admiration. Paz is still in denial about her newfound thoughts and emotions, but the walls she built around her are slowly beginning to crumble. In her fourth entry, Paz recounted the day in which Chico insisted that she go with him to watch a soccer match between Costa Rican and Nicaraguan MSF members. The R&D team had built a field by placing simple goals on the deck. Paz recalled how excited both players and crowd were for this event, reminding her of a carnival. At some point in the match, a fight broke out between a Costa Rican player and a Nicaraguan player, which was stopped by the referee, Huey. "I thought we had forsaken our countries, become one with the earth," he quoted Snake. He then reminded them that in MSF, there was no competition for national pride and no war being fought for any one country, and that soccer is a peaceful sport. The soldiers immediately stopped bickering, and Paz noted how MSF clearly seemed to share Snake's vision. Team Costa Rica was down a man, and somehow Paz was chosen to fill in. She couldn't even be bothered to run at first, but soon found herself actively playing. She recalled how Chico cheered her on despite being Nicaraguan, and how her first shot was stopped by the goalkeeper, admitting that she felt disappointment and more determined. After the match, the players sprawled themselves out onto the shade on the deck, soaking in the ocean breeze. Paz recounted how Nuke came over to her on one of his favorite spots. The day ended as they watched the clouds drift lazily about. By this fourth entry, Paz was no longer afraid to admit some of her emotions. She admitted to her disappointment and determination while playing soccer. She blissfully recounted her peaceful moment with Nuke after the match, clearly growing fond of the kitten. And most important of all, she didn't really complain much about her circumstances. At this point, she truly seemed to be settling into mother base. In her fifth entry, Paz recounted a beautiful day in which she decided to tan until she was interrupted by Strangelove, the latter who clearly had an interest in Paz's beauty. Eventually, Strangelove shyly complimented Paz's beautiful skin and insisted that she protect it. Strangelove then offered a tube of her sunscreen that she always used, and then offered to put some on her. Without giving Paz a chance to protest, she quickly began to apply the cream all over her body. Paz found herself unable to refuse, captivated by her beauty and the sensation. She admitted that she enjoyed this moment, even when she shouldn't have. Paz's conclusion after the unorthodox experience was that Strangelove is dangerous, and that she needed to watch herself around her. In this fifth entry, Paz briefly snapped back to the reality of her inevitable mission, recognizing that she's making herself too comfortable in Mother Base. At the same time, she wasn't afraid to admit her enjoyment of her moment with Strangelove and her admiration for Strangelove's beauty. Her walls seem to crumble faster than she can rebuild them. Paz's sixth entry recounted a time when she became sick with a common cold. She was confined to her room to rest until she healed, with only Nuke keeping her company. She recalled how at times like these, being alone felt miserable, but she did eventually get visitors throughout her days of sickness. Amanda had made her soup to alleviate her cold. Kaz had sang to her a Japanese lullaby, although Paz did note that he was a horrible singer. She had enough of him when he suggested suppository, which is when Paz threw her tissue box at him to go away. Strangelove had tried to forcefully apply some medicine onto her chest before being whacked by Paz's pillow and forced out. Chico had brought her a flower, and Paz noted it was quite clear that he had some kind of crush on her. She claimed these visits did not cheer her up at all, despite how cheerfully she recounted them. Snake had been the last one to visit before the tape recording. She asked him some questions like why he abandoned his country and why he created MSF. Snake wasn't very forthcoming, only stating that he was abandoned by his country since all he can do is fight, which is why a home like MSF was necessary. He clarified, however, that while fighting is the only thing he understood, he had no grudge against those who believed in peace. But of course, the identity of Paz was an elaborate ruse, so she herself never actually believed in peace. In that respect, she contemplated how she and Snake may not be so different after all. She expressed that for that reason, she must kill him, because the alternative is for him to kill her. The tape concluded with Paz contemplating on her wretched existence, stating that being killed by a man like him may not be so bad after all. In this entry, Paz once again tried to push aside her emotions, denying that any of the visits had cheered her up, even despite how cheerfully she recounted them. You can almost imagine Paz smiling and laughing to herself as she's telling these stories. Paz is clearly in denial. This tape also marks the first time that Paz began to question her existence. Having experienced friendship, joy, and peace at Mother Base, she began to realize how much she had been missing out, how lonely she had been her whole life, and how wretched her existence had been. In her seventh entry, Paz spoke of one of MSF's quirky traditions. Once a month, MSF throws a party for all the soldiers whose birthdays fall in that month. She noted the strangeness of a military organization having parties and labeled these days as simply an excuse to drink and make noise. After all, it wasn't easy to get alcohol to a base in the middle of the sea, and most of their days were spent training from dawn to dusk, which is why Snake and Miller came up with this tradition to give everyone a chance to let loose once in a while. The traditional days mostly consisted of men smoking cigars or cigarettes, drinking beer, eating meat, telling tasteless jokes, and swapping crude insults about one another's hometowns. They talked up a storm, but they are just having fun, according to Paz. She particularly noted how bizarre it was to see individuals from all kinds of different backgrounds, people who would have once considered each other mortal enemies, now rubbing shoulders with each other. And leaving their countries behind, these soldiers had left their hatred for other countries as well. Paz then recounted a funny story of a drunk Kaz Miller dropping his pants and mooning everybody. The other soldiers burst out laughing. As crude and ridiculous as Paz thought of the party, she couldn't help but wonder if what she witnessed was what they called peace. When she stopped and thought about all that had happened to her at Mother Base, she realized that her time there had been the most peaceful of her life, but she knew this peace would end and that the day would come when she would have to fight Big Boss. Despite knowing that her victory is uncertain, and even after calling her mission unreasonable, she stated with confidence that she would gladly choose death over the fear and despair that would await her if she were to defy Cypher. She was also motivated to finish her mission out of her sense of loyalty, feeling as though she would never be able to repay her debt to Cypher for taking her in as an orphan. The tape concluded with her conviction to fight Snake, having no choice in the matter. By this time, Paz's walls had completely broken down. She had no trouble admitting that her time at Mother Base had been the most peaceful of her life. She had no qualms about calling Cypher's orders unreasonable, and it's quite clear that what's compelling her more than anything to finish her mission is fear. For the first time, Paz accepted her true emotions and thoughts, leading her to develop doubt about her mission. Paz's 8th entry told of a time she witnessed a rare fight between Kaz and Snake because of Kaz's insatiable womanizing habit. Paz noted that the few female soldiers that were in MSF fell for Kaz quite easily, some of it stemming from the fact that he is actually not that bad looking. At some point, Kaz had been two-timing someone, and that same someone told Snake about her troubles, which led to the fight. What began as a shouting match inside the shower culminated to Snake and Kaz bursting out of their showers completely naked, trading punches. Paz noted that she is no child and that the sight of a naked man did not make her blush, but what she witnessed was something else. The fight went on for quite a while and both men ended up with cuts and bruises all over their bodies. Paz noted that it was obvious that neither were fighting for real or aiming for vital blows, since one of them would be dead already if that were the case. It was combat without hatred or hostile intent, Paz exclaimed, noting that she had never seen violence like this. At the same time, it wasn't just a friendly tussle, as both were giving it their all, using every technique in their arsenal. Eventually, the two tired themselves out and the fight ended. Then they looked at each other and burst out laughing, embracing and congratulating each other on a good fight. Paz could not comprehend what she had seen, but she did come to the conclusion that there was no one that Kaz trusted more than Snake, and that nothing would be able to come between the two. With that one simple thought, Paz began to feel as if she had already lost the battle. It's interesting that what intimidated Paz the most about her mission was the unbreakable bond between Snake and Kaz. I think she began to understand that MSF isn't just a ragtag band of pirates and mercenaries, but rather an army that is unified and driven by the ideals of Big Boss and the trust placed on him. But more than anything, this tape served to show a very different and more human side to Snake and Kaz. We are so used to seeing Snake on missions and hearing Kaz providing intel that it's difficult to imagine how they get along under more normal circumstances, but these tapes paint a pretty good picture. In her 9th entry, Paz spoke of a festival that Mother Base was preparing for. Because MSF spent so much time fighting, Snake and Kaz decided to set aside one day a year for peace and relaxation. With so little fun to be had in Mother Base, the soldiers were very much looking forward to this event. With preparations underway, Paz was somehow dragged into singing on stage with Kaz. "Come on, we even both have peace in our names," he said. Without checking with her, Kaz began to work on the song and share the idea with everyone, so she was slated to sing. Apparently, Kaz had heard Paz sing to herself one day on the deck and had wanted to form a band since. With everyone looking forward to it, Paz decided not to back out. She had never done anything like this, but admitted that it felt nice to know people were looking forward to it, joking that her singing couldn't possibly be worse than Miller's. By this time, modifications to ZEKE had been finalized, allowing Paz to complete her mission at any moment. She knew that if she betrayed Cypher now, she'd face a fate far worse than death. But knowing that the festival was only a few days away, she decided there was no need to put things in motion just yet, telling herself that waiting a while longer would make no difference. Despite knowing that she was delaying the inevitable, she wanted nothing more than to stall Cypher until this day of peace. The tape concluded with Paz asking herself, "When did I begin having thoughts like this?" The previous tapes made it quite clear that she had been having thoughts like these for a while now, but it's not until recently that she was willing to admit them to herself instead of blocking them out. At this point, it's quite clear that Paz doesn't want to do this mission, with her only motivation being fear. Not once did she mention her debt to Cypher in this tape, and in fact, she purposely went against him by stalling her mission just to have this day of peace and to sing on stage in front of everyone. When you think about it, these thoughts of hers are actually kinda cute, like those of a little kid looking forward to Christmas. Unfortunately for Paz, her day of peace would never arrive. She would record her 10th and final entry 3 days before the day of peace, minutes before the activation of Metal Gear ZEKE, and likely while Snake was searching for Zadornov in Mother Base's shooting range. Cypher had somehow found out that ZEKE's modifications had been completed before Paz relayed that information, leading her to believe that there was likely another mole inside Mother Base. She absolutely resented Cypher for this, complaining about how he spins his tightly wound web of control, leaving no room for individual will. Unbeknownst to Paz, the mole was none other than Kaz Miller, who was working with Cypher as a business associate to expand Mother Base. After Cypher had learned from Kaz that ZEKE's modifications had been completed, Cypher immediately ordered Paz to complete her mission. Paz resented that the day of peace she was so looking forward to would never come. The song that Kaz had written for her to sing was called Love Deterrence, which is about a girl who can't express her true feelings, which ironically is a perfect description of Paz herself. Also, for those who didn't know, this is the song that plays in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker's final battle against Paz and ZEKE. Paz had been practicing and was sure she'd do a decent job. Wanting the day of peace to come, she made one last attempt to delay her mission by sabotaging ZEKE, being careful to make it look as though a component had simply gone bad. But in the process, Chico walked in, who saw her, panicked, and ran away. Paz noted how easy it would have been to kill him, but she couldn't pull the trigger. She resorted to one final thought. Maybe Chico will keep what he saw a secret to protect me. But she knew she could not take that chance. She knew her cover had been blown and that she had to take action now. She knew her day of peace would never come and that her song would never be heard. After resenting her situation one more time, the tape concluded with the words, "Metal Gear ZEKE, activate." Paz's final tape was the first time she resented and criticized Cypher. It's quite clear that by this time, her loyalty had shifted. She had come to care for the people at Mother Base, she had become comfortable with her new home, and she expressed resentment for the inevitability of her mission. Paz had transformed quite dramatically since her first day at Mother Base. She was no longer hesitant to admit her emotions and had no shame in saying how much she was looking forward to sing on stage, or how much she looked forward to the day of peace, all things that she would have considered pathetic, degrading, or childish many days ago. The human side that was locked away by Cypher had resurfaced, and what was once her reality, the mission, had become the facade. And thus ends Paz's diary. After Paz was defeated by Big Boss and had failed her mission, and after she had been rescued by the Belizean fishermen, sometime before March of 1975, she was captured by Skullface and the XOF unit under Cypher's orders, the latter who sensed Paz's wavering loyalty. She was taken to Camp Omega, a prison camp located on the southern tip of Cuba, where she was brutally interrogated by Skullface for information. But rather than being asked about her loyalty to Cypher, she was asked about Cypher's location. Paz learned that Skullface's intention was to kill Zero, since he had grown tired of being under Cypher's control. Knowing that Paz was one of few people who had met Cypher, he intended to use any means to extract Cypher's location out of her. Paz resisted torture for many days, but that would change with the unexpected arrival and capture of Chico. Sometime between March 7th and March 8th of 1975, after one of her brutal torture sessions, Paz was taken back to her cell to find Chico in the adjacent cell. Between March 9th and 11th, Chico tried to talk to Paz after her periodic interrogation sessions, but Paz, who cared for Chico, acted cold and distant so that he would not be used as leverage. Unfortunately, on March 12th, Skullface did just that. Both Chico and Paz were taken to Skullface for interrogation. He first had Paz tortured for Chico to see, and then proceeded to ask Chico questions in regards to Metal Gear ZEKE and Mother Base, information that he would need to take down Big Boss and MSF. Chico refused to cooperate, so Skullface tried another method. Paz was stripped naked and prepped to be raped in front of Chico, but despite her circumstances, Paz begged Chico to remain silent. After being raped by one of Skullface's men, he then forced Chico to rape her. Unable to take any more, he finally broke. Paz was taken back to her cell while Chico remained with Skullface to give up information about Metal Gear ZEKE and Mother Base. Then Chico was eventually taken back to his cell. Relieved to see him unharmed, Paz began to open up to him, admitting that she missed him, going as far as kissing him. Chico pulled away, however, knowing that it's not the appropriate time for that. Then Paz asked him if he wanted to do it here. It is not known what she meant by that, but many assume it was an invitation for sex. I won't confirm or deny that since I don't know. What I would say with confidence is that Paz did in fact fall in love with Chico, but not in the conventional sense. Think about it. During her lonely days of hell at Camp Omega, Chico was the only thing that kept her company and wasn't there to harm her. He was nice to her, showed her that he cared for her, and gave her hope that she may get out of Camp Omega alive. Before Chico's arrival, all Paz had to look forward to was rotting inside a cell or being brutally tortured. But with Chico's arrival, she could look forward to a familiar and friendly face, some company, and a small ray of hope. How could she not fall in love with Chico under the circumstances when he was the only good and pleasant thing about her days at Camp Omega? Think of Chico as Paz's Wilson. In the movie Castaway, Tom Hanks' character, Chuck Noland, is stranded on an island for 4 years, and in his loneliness comes to develop a bond with a volleyball. Paz went through an even worse hell, and in her loneliness had understandably come to develop a bond with Chico, who was not only an actual human, but also a familiar and friendly face. I know it seems kinda weird for an adult woman to fall in love with this teenage child, but under the circumstances, it makes sense psychologically. Skullface took advantage of this bond between March 13th and 14th, during which Chico would be forced to torture Paz. Chico begged for her to talk so that she would no longer have to suffer, but Paz responded by calling Chico a coward and a traitor. Chico began to lose his composure, so he was taken back to his cell, while Paz's torture continued. Sometime after, Skullface came to visit Chico, giving him false information that Paz had allegedly talked in exchange that she be returned to Big Boss and only her. In other words, Chico was led to believe that he would be abandoned in Camp Omega, since Paz would be able to tell everyone how Chico betrayed MSF, his comrades and family, by talking. But Skullface gave him a counteroffer. He offered to kill Paz and look the other way if Big Boss came to rescue him, in exchange for Chico's help in recording an SOS signal, which Skullface would send out and use as bait 40 hours before March 16th, 1975, which is when Ground Zeroes takes place. Chico only agreed after Skullface promised to make Paz's death painless. But of course, that promise was a lie. Once Chico helped record the SOS signal, the rest of Skullface's days leading up to March 16th were spent on Paz. Between March 14th and 15th, Paz would undergo one last interrogation session with Skullface. She learned that thanks to information from Chico's and Paz's report, a nuclear inspection team was sent to Mother Base. Skullface also stated that the scientist was their way in. Many noted that Skullface could be referring to Huey Emmerich, which would explain why he is being tortured in the Phantom Pain trailer. Skullface then assured Paz that his plan would succeed no matter what, and that in the end he would kill both Big Boss and Cypher. Unless, of course, Paz gave one of them a chance to survive. Skullface assured Paz that giving up Cypher's location would give Big Boss a higher chance of survival. Paz, who had come to care for Big Boss and MSF, finally gave up Cypher's location in hopes that she had used her final moments to save Big Boss. Sometime later, on March 15th, while Chico slept, Paz borrowed Chico's recorder to make one final recording. She expressed that she had never helped anyone else except for Cypher before, but that she would do anything to get Chico out. She never imagined Chico would come for her and apologize for acting cold, stating that she did it because she was afraid he would be used somehow. She expressed that in reality, Chico's presence had put her mind at ease and had given her hope that she'd make it out alive. She concluded her tape by thanking Chico one last time. Later that day, Paz was taken by Skullface's men to undergo surgery. By this time, Skullface had sent Chico's recorded SOS signal, timed so that Big Boss would arrive on the day of the false inspection, March 16th. Knowing that Snake would rescue Paz as well, he inserted 2 bombs inside her body, one inside her abdomen and another where no one would look. inside between her legs. All was going according to plan. Big Boss would arrive on Camp Omega on the same date as the fall's inspection, allowing Skullface to ambush Big Boss through the bombs inside Paz and to distract him from realizing that the inspection was a guise to infiltrate and destroy Mother Base. Paz, who had been anesthetized, would wake up a day later on March 16th to find that Big Boss had come to rescue her. Still disoriented, she was unable to tell Snake of the bombs inside her body. After both Paz and Chico had been successfully rescued and loaded onto the extraction chopper, Chico noticed that Paz's abdomen had been stitched closed. Snake recognized that there was a bomb inside her body, so the medic had no choice but to begin surgery without anesthetic. Paz underwent immense pain as the bomb was forcefully removed from within her. The bomb was successfully removed and tossed out, but unbeknownst to everyone, there was a second bomb. Paz did not wake up until after Big Boss witnessed Mother Base crumble. By now, she was conscious enough to tell Big Boss that there was a bomb inside her body. Big Boss assured her that it had been taken out, but Paz revealed that there was a second bomb. Knowing there was no time left, in one final act of sacrifice, Paz jumped out of the chopper. Unfortunately, the bomb went off mid-air, close enough to the chopper to do significant damage to both the vehicle and the people inside. The only known survivors are Snake and Kaz. The fates of others, like Chico and the medic, are unknown. Thanks to Paz's final act of courage, Big Boss survived, even if marginally, and her final wish was fulfilled, and thus ended Paz's tragic story. By the end of Ground Zeroes, I honestly found Paz to be one of the most complex and tragic characters in all of Metal Gear. She is someone whose youth as an orphan was taken advantage of by Cypher to mold her into a ruthless agent. In doing so, Cypher had locked away much of her humanity. Despite all this, the tapes clearly showed that there were signs of innocence deep inside. Technically, she may be an adult, but she reminded me of a child who had seen so little of the world. The identity of Paz may have been a facade, but I like to think that this persona was the real her, while Pacifica Ocean was a construct of Cypher's. I like to think that Pacifica borrowed from who she used to be to become Paz, which is why she was so damn good at playing the role. The saddest part is that things could have clearly turned out much better for her under the right circumstances, but ultimately her fear of betraying Cypher overwrote the rest of her instincts, thoughts, and emotions, resulting in the chain of events that led to her tragic downfall. But as they say, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. In the end, Paz died honorably protecting MSF and Big Boss, breaking free from Cypher's will and control, and making her own choices, almost like a sign of things to come. She had transformed from a robot programmed by Cypher to an individual human. It also comforts me to know that Paz did not die alone. She died with the happy memories from her stay at Mother Base. She died knowing that people like Chico cared for her to the end, and she died knowing that she did what she could to help Big Boss. A bittersweet end to a bittersweet character. So there you have it, folks, Paz's complete story and my analysis of the character. Be sure to let our nation know in the comments below your own analysis and opinions of the character. And to be further updated on Metal Gear Solid 5, be sure to join the nation and subscribe to Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much, and Young out!